From two games that were ultra competitive on the Saturday night, back to the Saturday afternoon where Melbourne copped a second consecutive 10-goal drubbing, this time at the hands of Gold Coast. It's not looking great for Melbourne at the moment. They lose to North Melbourne, then lose to Gold Coast, who have historically really struggled on the road. What was your early take from this game?
Yeah, well, I was really impressed with the Gold Coast Suns and what we saw from them, their ability to spread out of the midfield, but I was expecting a real bounce back from Melbourne. I thought they were going to be disappointed from last week and really show a whole lot of fight and a lot of grit, and we didn't really see a whole lot of it, to be completely honest. I think they were outplayed through the midfield, which is an area and contest where they pride themselves on at that football club. And yeah, the Gold Coast Suns really own them. And that just leads me into the point. If this was a Melbourne midfield or a Melbourne team's midfield, a club that plays in Melbourne, would we be saying that they're the best midfield in the AFL? I mean, Anderson, Miller, Rao, yes, the two opportunities we've seen them this year, we thought this week would probably be a pretty big challenge for them against that dominant midfield from Melbourne, but they absolutely dominated. So Anderson, 35 and 10 score involvements, Miller, 23 10-score involvements and 3 goals, and then Rao just became a clearance beast. 36 disposals, 13 clearances, 9 of those were from centre bounce. So let's have a look. I want to have a look at Matt Rao here in 2020. So this is when he burst onto the scene, had an extremely good first few matches, and then obviously had that shoulder injury which ruled him out for the rest of the season. But his ability to break away from stoppage, I don't know if we've seen that since that 2020 season. Here, Clayton Oliver, happy to wrestle with him. And Rao, watch his turn of foot here. His ability to know that this is going to Jeffrey and to break out of stoppage. Most of his centre clearances, 9 in total, were out the front where he was just bursting away. Here, he just takes the ball under the arm, drives out of stoppage and delivers it inside forward 50 on the burst. Clayton Oliver had absolutely no chance keeping up with him, and I just think this is incredible signs from someone that's had such tough runs with injury at times, and I think we're finally starting to see the best of Matt Rao, and I was super impressed with him today.
Well, Miller and Rao really the two big improvers off the last 18 months to where they were today, but it takes us to the Demons, who on the flip side really were nowhere near their best. Brad Green was on SEN before the game saying that he's confident that they can be finals contenders year in, year out, and that there's no sort of hangover in terms of what the cultural reset was over the summer, but today they were nowhere near it on the field and their disposal was terrible.
Yeah, well, their disposal was almost as good as their pressure, and we're seeing some of their disposals at the moment which were just woeful. It was their ability to use the ball was really, really impacted, and at times there was no pressure really on the player that made the mistake. So just really inexcusable from players too. We've been so accustomed to see Bailey Fritsch take that mark, go back, kick a goal, and just very disappointing. And the thing that compounds errors is errors on top of errors. So you can get away with one and try and clean it up, but there were multiple errors in chains of play where they just couldn't make Gold Coast pay for their errors, and then on the counter-attack they'd go back and score goals against them. 2
10-goal defeats in a row in Melbourne doesn't get that much worse, but how much worse does it need to get for the alarm bells to start ringing for the Demons?
I would say they're probably internally alarm bells are ringing at the moment. I think they sort of thought that they had such a loved-up pre-season. That's what we heard in the whole of the off-season. Everyone had found their love for each other, and nothing tests love more than a little bit of adversity. So it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks how they can get this game back on track. But this season, any team that's been back against the wall has been able to have that bounce back factor. So I think Geelong will be a bit wary of Melbourne next week, but they absolutely need to show a lot more than they did this afternoon at the MCG.
An interesting moment in that game just before the end of the third quarter with Will Graham kicking a goal. As you can see, the seconds ticking down there. Did he get it away before the siren went off?
Look, I'm going to say he didn't. I was at the ground. But in saying that, it's when the umpire hears the siren, they're supposed to blow their whistle. So the first concern I have with this, if we watch it play out, on the wide, you can actually see the umpire that's in control doesn't actually even blow his whistle to start with to call the end of the quarter. So it would have been a lot easier to tell whether or not it should have been adjudicated a goal if as soon as that umpire heard the siren, blow the whistle, hand in the air, and you can tell whether that's sort of been disposed of before the siren or after the siren. So ultimately it didn't have any effect on the game, but it was one of those ones that came up that if we have the ability to review it from a score review perspective, should we be able to? Diving back through the rule books, it says we actually can't. So does that need to be something that we look at?
Definitely a talking point.